What is going on, guys? Welcome to part 2 where we're joined by CrossFit media legend Armen Hammer. I hope you enjoyed the video, guys. And I was keen to get your thoughts on the main theme being you're a CrossFit SME. You've been around the scene for quite a while. You know quite a lot. What do you think the future of CrossFit will be? And kind of touching on, in particular, the games, sanctionals, regionals, whatever it's going to be, athletes, sponsors, media. I've seen a big surge in, I'm doing a lot more media. You're the kind of OG of the media CrossFit world. The value of the sport, is it going to get as big as a UFC boxing type thing? There's lots more money being poured into it. What are the leadership plans moving forward? One thing I've noticed, I work in recruitment, IT recruitment, so a lot of my days are spent on LinkedIn. I've seen a significant increase in activity on CrossFit's social media channel page on LinkedIn, for example, and across all of their other social media platforms. So seems to be a big push around that as well. I mean, what's your thoughts? We've covered too many there, I don't know, but what's your thoughts?
Yeah, I think generally Eric Roza is a positive move for the CrossFit Games. I think he's a positive move for CrossFit in general, but I think he's definitely, he's going to make a significant impact in the future of the CrossFit Games as a sport. And the reason why I say that is simply because Greg Glassman never liked the CrossFit Games. He started them, but to him, and this is something that I pointed out many, many times, to him, CrossFit as a sport, the CrossFit Games, it was a sideshow. It was essentially marketing. And if you look at it from Greg Glassman's personality, he's super contrarian. He's very anti-establishment. He's very in your face. And the CrossFit Games were started with the idea that not only are we going to be the best of the best, but we're going to crush everyone else who wants to play our game. And we're going to do it in devastating fashion. And I think to a certain extent, that's how the games evolved. It was about finding the sort of tip of the spear of CrossFitters and showing the world that the human body can do all these crazy things. And the way to get there is to do CrossFit. And so as a marketing move, it made sense. And as a sport, it never was really developed to be a long-lasting sport. Every move that CrossFit made internally was to prop it up, not for it to actually succeed 10 years from now or 20 years from now. And I think now that Eric Roza is in place, he is clearly a fan of CrossFit as a sport. He clearly sees some future, some value of CrossFit as a sport. And I think the move that he's going to be making and the direction that he's going to be taking the sport in is kind of telegraphed by things like the UFC, or he mentioned Ironman as well. Yeah. Is this idea that it's a very niche sport in terms of participation, but it's incredibly lucrative, and everyone knows and understands it and respects it. And I can see why he's making that comparison, because that makes sense from a brand perspective. Ironman was owned by a company and run by a company. It doesn't mean that other people can't do triathlons, but no other event ever came close to, the Kona Ironman World Championships. It was just everyone knew what that was, whether you knew anything about Ironman or not. And I think that's an exercise in branding. And I think CrossFit has done a really good job of branding themselves really well. And that speaks to where it can go in the future. With the sanctionals relationship, I love that it was opened up to outside event organizers. I don't know that it's going to be as open and accessible as it was previously, in the past 2 years. My gut is telling me that there's probably going to be some sort of competitive circuit that pops up that doesn't necessarily have anything to do with the CrossFit Games, but that CrossFit themselves is, they're looking to either limit the number of outside event organizers so that they control it a little bit better, or to have way more control over what those event organizers can do in terms of the sport. So there's a lot of different models that they could follow. There's the golf model, there's the tennis model. I just don't know what direction they're going to go in, but I am hopeful for the future.
There is an element of, and you think, with any big company, there's always somebody that wants a slice of the pie, and you've got a massive, there's Facebook, but then there's Instagram. So these two, one buys the other one, or acquires the other one, but somebody goes into the market to try and compete with them. Do you think you'll see? I mean, Eric seems to be intelligent enough around that kind of commercially savvy sort of world. Do we have any competitors that could take on CrossFit and maybe increase prize money and attract the athletes away from CrossFit brand? Or
potentially, I mean, if you look at the one organization that sticks out to me is Loud and Live. They did a really aggressive move of taking over or starting or buying, or however you want to look at it, but essentially owning 5 of the sanctionals. And even though they were only able to do one, so they did a Wadapalooza, a Granite Games, and another Wadapalooza. So they weren't able to pull off the event in Mexico, the event in Spain, the event in San Diego, or the second Granite Games. So there's no real, we don't really know exactly how those things would have gone, but they were trending to be either the biggest cash prizes or the biggest participatory events in the space. And so they've already said they're not going to be a part of whatever the next season looks like. They're not participating. And so that gives them the opportunity to say, okay, well then, if we want, we can create our own little insular system with just these 5 events. And I don't know if it's going to be something they're even particularly pursuing, but it would make sense to me that they would want to protect the events that they do have. I don't think that, whether Wadapalooza is a sanctional or not, it's going to survive. It's going to succeed. It has a very special vibe to it. It has a very special character to it that people love.
We were thinking about going over because we went to the CrossFit Games in 2015 for the experience, and we were like, if we go to America again, I would much rather go to Wadapalooza than the games.
Oh yeah,
it just looked more fun and awesome to be there, and then it was hot and all that sort, and you could potentially participate as well, if you wanted to, and it looked a lot more fun. So I was like, we could give that a go.
Absolutely. And I think that's where you start seeing where potential competitors could exist. Is there ever going to be an event that's bigger than the CrossFit Games? Very unlikely. Very, very unlikely. CrossFit has done an exceptionally good job of building a moat around the games itself, particularly around the individual competition. Yeah. They stake their claim on the title of fittest man and woman on earth, and that is through the CrossFit Games competition. So there isn't going to be a competition that comes up, whether it has more money or not, that's going to be able to take over the prestige that comes with the CrossFit Games as an event.
Original, and people want to take that crown. And I think one thing that I would like to see, just from a kind of a spectator of watching CrossFit, is that we've had the Rich Froning show, and we've got the Mat Fraser show. And if CrossFit grows and it attracts athletes from different other sports coming into it, that we could see a more competitive field on the male and the female side. If the prize money is big enough that somebody from another sport would think, actually, if I'm not going to give up, £1 million in revenue here because I'm winning these competitions here, in another sport. If the competition prize money was higher in CrossFit, it could potentially pull these athletes over, and then we'd see a bit more of a broader field.
Yeah, it is interesting that CrossFit on the men's side 100% has been about dynasties, and on the women's side it's starting to turn into that. I mean, we've had 3 multi-time champions on the women's side, and Tia is unbeatable. I don't think it's controversial to say that.
It's not. Both of them are. They've got some secret sauce that they're drinking every day or something. Like, it's just the mentality of them as individuals, and they're not letting go. They will not let go. Nobody, like, I could say it with full confidence, nobody can beat them, and unless they don't want to do it anymore.
I agree. I've been lucky enough to spend a little bit of time with them both, to watch them train with each other, compete against one another, compete at the same events, that sort of thing. And I I as good. So Mat Fraser is undoubtedly the best male CrossFitter ever. He's Rich is incredible. Don't get me wrong, but the things that Matt has been able to do, and the competition that Matt has had is it's just a different era. It's a completely different era. So I would say Matt is undoubtedly the best male CrossFitter to ever live. Tia is arguably better than he is in a if you look at absolute capacity. She's like a different human being. It is incredible to me that not only are we to see the two best CrossFitters that have ever done CrossFit side by side, training against one another and competing at the games at the same time, but they also both are very, very motivated and incentivized to keep putting themselves back into the fire. That to me is so cool. And that's one of the reasons why selfishly I want to see the 2020 games occur. I really want to see it happen because I'm such a big fan of Matt and Tia and their stories that it would be such a shame to have a gap year.
Yeah, for them in particular, because another year older, and it's a bit of a weird year, isn't it? It's just
a bit of a weird year.
Just so odd and crazy. So, what about value of the sport? We spoke about that, and the leadership. Do you think that there'll be ever a point where it will get sold on? Do you think that's a strategy that Eric might be thinking, that we could get an increased value of this company, and in 5-10 years time, sell it on to the highest bidder? Different sponsors maybe like coming into it. I don't think it will happen, but Nike potentially, or somebody that's got some big clout in the sport world.
It's hard to say because there is obviously an argument to be made that it's owned by CrossFit. They want to keep it in-house. They want to run it in-house as much as they can. They can kind of shop it out in terms of licensing the event. So for example, the Super Bowl in the US for the football championships for the NFL, it goes to a different city each year, goes to a different host team each year. And there's like a bidding process, and they have to provide various things and create various events, and it all happens around the Super Bowl. And I think there's a world in which the event organizers are mature enough where CrossFit's no longer directly organizing all these events. They're kind of licensing it out and shopping it out, and they can make a whole big to-do about announcing who the next year's host of the CrossFit Games will be or whatever. That's an interesting potential end result. But everything changes if somebody offers you $1 billion or $2 billion, right? All your plans are really, really close to your heart. But then if someone's writing you a check with 9 zeros attached to it, suddenly things change in terms of the perspective.
Well, thanks for watching part 2, guys. If you're not already, please do hit that subscribe button. We are getting fresh content out to you every single week. So to stay up to date, click that subscribe button. I hope you enjoyed part 2. Part 3 is ready to watch.